Best band in Colorado. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Unity of Boulder Church Center. We're an all-inclusive community, and we believe that the truth exists at the heart of every major religion. And we believe that if we seek the truth, we will be open to find a way to live life more effectively, beautifully, and joyfully right now. So heaven is in our midst, and we're very happy to have you here with us today. We are having some kind of a fellowship following the service in our fellowship hall. Just go through these doors, and to your right, we don't have snacks and goodies like we used to have, but we're working toward that. In other words, when the restrictions are lifted, we'll have plenty of goodies and snacks still to share in there. So you're invited to join us just for a conversation after the service is over. And we welcome you for being here. I understand we have some new people here today. We would ask you to say hello and share yourselves, your information about who you are, where you came from, and why you're in Unity today. And so thank you for sharing this moment, this hour with us.
Good morning, everybody. We're going to start the morning out with a little rockin' song called What I Am by Edie Brickell and the New Bohemians. If you know it, please sing along. Aware of too many things. I know what I know, if you know what I mean. Thank you so much.
What a way to start. Oh, wow. She's just rocking it. Are we just watching this woman just develop? Oh my gosh, hi, welcome back. Haven't seen you in a while. I saw that you're coming back on Facebook. Facebook's cool for that, right? Where we can just see our congregants we haven't seen in, how long has it been? A year? 2? A year? Well, we've noticed. So I'm continuing a talk today. It was titled To Be Free or Not to Be. And I only got to do about 20 minutes of the sermon last Sunday because we had a guest. So I'm going to just kind of recap just a touch about the sermon. But the sermon was about myself and my husband leaving for Mexico 2 weeks ago, right after Easter, after we put on the Easter production. And all of the feels I was having towards actually leaving the country and actually getting out of my day-to-day life and observing the psychological hit that I've really taken from COVID and all the changes of this experience and not realizing how detrimental it was to my being. And so I'm, taking dogs to get them taken care of at my parents' house. One of my dogs that was sick, and then I had 2 dogs at my home, and then my children were going to their dad's. And as I just was like, basically, everything that I loved in the world, I was basically passing around to be taken care of. I just felt myself completely empty. Here I was looking forward to this trip, and here I'm now passing out everything that I love, and I'm feeling like I don't want to leave, to the point where I'm like, I don't even care how much money I've wasted on this, I don't want to go. And Mike was pushing me, he's like, the second you get on that plane, you're gonna want to go. And I got in the plane, and I still was just like, in a panic, like, a panic because we've been isolated. I've just done these steady things to make COVID feel normal, and there's this illness out there, and I'm on a plane with people, and there's people that are really defiant and not wearing their masks, and I'm not going to say which side I'm on that, but just the separation that we're feeling from so many things that are just making us feel trapped, and that's not like me. I'm an adventure girl. I'm a person that loves jumping off the cliff and feeling when God grabs me and surprises me with new experiences. And here I was stuck in this state. And I came across this in a documentary called Finding Joe. And this Chinese words for crisis starts with danger and opportunity. And that's how I felt. I got to move into opportunity because I'm in a state of panic, in like a state of fight or flight, and I'm going to end up losing this chance to refill my glass as a mother, as a minister, as a daughter, as all of the roles that I carry. And we all know what that's like. We got to get that break. And but I was so used to being around the children every day, all day, because I've been homeschooling, which has not been the case. Usually they're at school all day, and you got this kind of sense of normal separation, but even that's not been happening. So there was just this really sense of being very naked in the world. And we got to the ocean, and I sat on the ocean, and it was the most beautiful ocean I actually had ever seen. It was the most bluest I've ever seen it, and the sound was really relaxing and beautiful, but I just saw myself reliving the last year or more and the toll that this time has taken on my children who've not been in school. And their father won't let them go back to school still. So I'm seeing the psychological effect on my kids. And they say you are as happy as your saddest child. If you're a mom, you understand that, right? You're kind of just frozen if you have a child that's not happy, right? Because they are everything. And this quinceañera happened while I was laying on the beach where this young girl was turning 15, and she showed up in the most beautiful dress. And the whole family was taking pictures with the other siblings and everything. But there was one point that the mom was just standing behind her daughter, and it was just this silhouette of this gorgeous daughter, which my daughter's about a year and a half away from that. And the love, the organicness of their family. There's no divorce. Everybody's married, and the family and the nucleus was so beautiful to watch, and I found myself in grief for life and how hard it is, how painful it is. that I don't get to share this moment in Mexico because I'm not allowed to, because I'm not getting permission from this patriarchal past person. And all I wanted was them there, playing in that ocean and experiencing what I grew up with, and I can't even give them. So I decided to jump in the water, try to get a new attitude. And when I got in the water, this was the most turbulent water I've ever been in, and it literally just turned me. I mean, I just was literally drowning and being spinned, upside down, until finally it spit me out. And I'm crawling out of the water. My hair's all over my face and everything, and I finally get up and Jesus. And I realize there's this bachelorette party of Hispanic women that are drunk out of their minds, and they're all pointing at me laughing. This is such a good trip. I'm feeling so hot at my age right now. The whole thing was just. And so I stood up and I was like, you're welcome. Glad I could be your comedy relief. And honestly, it was great because there was so much love in their laughter. I didn't feel like they were laughing at me. They were just laughing at the absurdity of my consciousness that I went into that water with. I was matched with exactly what I was holding in myself. The universe is always honorable and will show us where we are in consciousness. So I went back to my chair and I ordered a drink. And I picked up a book and I started reading it. And of course, my husband really enjoyed that moment too, because he got to witness that lovely moment. And this is what I read when I opened the book. Your confidence, actually, it's the next quote, I think. Nope, this is not what I read, but this will work. Your confidence to become a spiritual warrior increases as you do something as simple as leaving your safe space. Meet new people, learn a new skill, or open your life to new possibilities. By taking advantage of even small opportunities to explore an unexpressed dimension of your being, you will increase your courage and discipline to be an explorer of the expansive territory within yourself. To be an explorer of the expansive territory within yourself. And I felt that. I was exploring a territory that was so fragmented and somewhat lost. When you go on a trip, you're finally quiet enough to visit self. I lost one of my best friends to cancer a few months ago. I almost lost my house twice in a fire last summer. The list of stuff of trauma that I have experienced this year was all packed up in a perfect little suitcase that went to Mexico with me. And I found myself grieving and crying on that beach for lost dreams and hopes. Feeling myself so raw and having that beautiful sound of that ocean singing to me. Holding space with so much love and beauty. And it made me remember how much I love this planet and the worry that I think we all walk around about our environment, hence the video that's supposed to be playing on the back wall. But this is really a talk about Earth Day. It's about our planet. It's about the loss of our innocence as far as what we're all seeing on a day-to-day basis, on the controversy in our politics, on women's rights, black rights, gay rights. It's all of it. It's so much. And yet we still traipse along and keep walking forward and don't realize that there's this subtle, percolating grief that we're all learning to live with almost. Accepting literally the unacceptable, especially as far as our global planet is going. And we know that our young children will not have a planet if we don't fix it by the time they graduate from high school. That number is real. Our planet has a fever. And we are vibrational beings that want to tune out that we're vibrational beings because we probably would grieve a lot. And so when we get away from that busyness of life, we start to remember what is truly important. what is truly important. So I came across this saying this week. The spiritual path is not a solo endeavor. In fact, the very notion of a self who is trying to free himself is a delusion. We are in it together, and the company of spiritual friends helps us realize our interconnectedness. We are in it together, and the company of spiritual friends helps us realize our interconnectedness. We really have lost our footing as far as how important our interconnectedness is. And so often the conversations that come into the center are people feeling lonely and feeling like they don't have their tribe to discuss this inner feeling that we're all going through. And it's not only that, it's the sisterhood, it's the brotherhood. That's what this community is about. That's what spiritual centers are for. Is to sit with like-minded people that also have different opinions. Even here we have issues of people not wanting to wear masks versus masks. And it's causing turbulence. Like, I literally have people wanting to counsel me about just sitting in the sanctuary. And yet there's such a bigger picture, such a bigger collective picture that we're all facing. And yet we're finding ways just to keep separating and separating and separating ourselves. A friend of mine in this congregation shared with me about a new book that came out by Elizabeth Lessor called Cassandra Speaks, which I haven't had a chance to read, but he also told me about a podcast that he'd listened to. And Elizabeth Lessor wrote the book Broken Open, Marrow, all my favorite books, the books I use the most and I've used in my women's book groups. So to hear that there's another book written by the most fabulous writer on the planet for females, and I think everyone gets touched by her work. He said there's a podcast out where she, Elizabeth Lessor, and Jane Fonda talk about moving from me to we. So you saw that title was on the back wall. That was their title for the podcast. And they were talking about global climate change, politics, the state of all humans during COVID and our relationship with each other, and the call for the divine feminine to awaken in all of us. Not just women, but men too. That it's the fall of the patriarchal society if we are going to survive a planet that will be sustainable for our children and 7 generations down the road. But at one point, Jane Fonda says this: "Now we can move out of this despair and join with others. That is why we have a real advantage as women. We are at an existential crossroads. The powers that be are trying to make us believe that we have to be individual, and we are at a crossroads facing a collective crisis that requires a collective solution at a time where individualism is being exalted and women are coming along and saying together. We have to be together. We know it in our DNA, the importance of not being alone. Strength in numbers, and that is what has to rise now. Us women know that we have to come together. But yet, we still are believing in a world that's telling us that separation is just the way it is now. And we're all signing up because we're like robots. Like, oh, okay, I guess we're all just going to keep staying separated. We're so scared of this COVID, and who has the shot now and who doesn't? Oh, that's the new one. How dare you ask me if I've gotten a shot or not? Like, when did we ever ask anyone if they got a shot or not? It's none of your freaking business. It's not. Like, it's private. And if you got it, God bless you. And if you didn't, God bless you. All of these ways we're finding to go, I don't agree with you. Oh, I don't agree with you either. I'm right and you're wrong. So it comes down to this spiritual vessel. The spiritual vessel has got to be filled at this time for us to grow our intuition, for us to not be surviving in the five senses, maybe too much the intellect, too much the feeling, too much the seeing, too much the hearing, but collectively bringing all five together and then bringing the sixth sense in. But you have to believe that there is a sixth sense. You have to look back on your life when it's been revealed to you, when the unseen realms of this universe has been guiding and directing you. When you thought you were at the end and at the limit and you didn't think anything could change, and something swept in and moved your life. When we remember those moments, we start to build that vessel, filling that spiritual vessel. That's right, that's right, that's right. Not only are we all in this together, but we all have actually a goal that is united, which is the sustaining of a planet for air, water, all of the animals, all of the fish life, all of the birds, and for our children to be able to play without their shoes on in rivers and lakes. And there's something greater that's just tapping on all of us. Please, 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 please. You are the answer to what you are seeking. Quit distracting yourself with making other people wrong, because it is hard to hold on and actually build within ourselves that I am the Christ. I am the Buddha. She is the Buddha. She is the Buddha. He is the God. We are all the expression of that which we are seeking to make the changes we have to do for our own survival. But look at how the media and all these things they're playing us against each other. They're dividing us, and we're believing in it. Our Facebook, our TVs, our news, all of it. It's fun to play in those areas, but don't make that your God. Because you empty the vessel, and you just become human first when you're actually spiritual first. You are a spiritual light being that's wearing a coat this lifetime, where that coat falls aside, and we move on, and we actually do many lifetimes. And we have lots of knowledge that came from other lifetimes, and when we do build that sixth sense, we can actually remember the things we learned, so we can bring it here, so we can even learn more. So we can be the majesty that God called us to be. So many of us are living outside of our innate design, shifting, changing, being something for a world that doesn't feel like it belongs to us anymore. Who feels that? This is what I wrote when I sat down on that beach. A world that doesn't feel like it belongs to me anymore. Who feels like your world still belongs to you? Because it's consciousness. Because this world is no longer functioning, and the people in it are no longer functioning from a state of homeostasis. We are so out of balance from where we came from. It is hard to figure out what is up and what is down, what is right and what is wrong, when we have all been living in flight or fight from a state of pure confusion and acting like everyone is fine, when nothing resembles what the soul came here to experience and do and be. But when we ask them how they're doing, they're like, I'm fine. I'm fine. The state of homeostasis. The ability or tendency of a living organism, cell, or group to keep the conditions inside it the same despite any changes in the conditions around it, or the state of internal balance. See, I'm a Libra. My soul seeks balance in everything. And I'm sure many of you are thinking to yourself, gosh, Syntysche, why can't you get happy this year? I've had emails. Why can't you just get happy? And just know that you're the Christ and stop being sad about Maya. Why can't you just get happy? And because I'm a minister and I'm standing here, I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm not a liar. I'm in the work of souls. And when there's a frequency and a vibration that I'm tuned into, I know that we're all collectively somehow there too. And then as I'm lifting it, I'm reminding you how to lift it. And we're mirroring back and forth. And the more strong you get, the better I get. And we're all doing this process. because we are in a state of massive change right now. My work is to feel the fever of this planet, to feel the vibrational pulse of life in this universe. The more I meditate, the more empathic I am. And you know what happens when you're empathic is that you feel everything. You feel the pain of others. They don't have to say words. You just walk by and you just feel like, whew. Oh. And you also have the moments of like just glorious high of watching eagles. Yesterday, I sat outside my house and this eagle just went in a circle over our house for like an hour. And I knew that Mike, my husband, lost his best friend this week. And he was found dead in his apartment. And I knew that was Eric. It's a really interesting time right now. And I'm so grateful that I was clear to handle Mike for his moment. And he was clear to be there for me in my moment, in my loss. But that's companionship. That's the collective. I have that support. And a lot of people don't right now. So, in Wild Mercy, a book that we did with a women's group, she writes this. This will really lift you. This is the greatest book ever. If you want a book, this is going to really break you open. It's amazing. So far, this incarnation has been fraught with losses, rife with disappointments, heavy with heartache. There have been untimely deaths of loved ones who seem to be about to cross the threshold into a beautiful and interesting life, not out of it. When you breathe into the pain of your losses, you detect the presence of a smoldering ember you thought had been snuffed out years ago. But there it is, fragrant and warm. If you blew on it now, it would burst into flame. At first, you will not recognize the radiance hidden in all the darkness that has befallen you, the grief, the longing. You will not be equipped with the skills required to translate the secret welcome home sign planted in your soul's ravaged landscape. It will look like keep out. If someone were to tell you that your losses were your passage to a voyage across the sea of samsara, the suffering of illusion, to the land of nirvana, the bliss of awakening, you would not believe them. Your discovery of the restorative root system underlying your ruined life will come later, in the inevitable springtime, which we're in, thank you, God, when the small green shoots of compassion muscle their way up and out of the charred earth and begin to spread and bud and flower and propagate themselves. You will eat because you will be hungry, and then you will feed the world because you will not be able to resist the impulse to share the bounty. Let's sit with that for a second. You will eat because you'll be hungry because we've gone through all of this. But then you won't be able to resist to want to share the bounty with others, which is the sign that we've moved out of that lost place. When the Deepwater Horizon rig exploded and began spilling oil in the spring of the 2010, we were confronted with a grief we could barely comprehend. Who remembers that? Everybody remembers that oil. I am positive. Let me see your hands, because I know it affected me. That oil just chugging into the ocean, and every day we check the news. Have they gotten it out? Have they gotten it out? And we're just seeing tons and tons of oil just blowing this beautiful ocean. That was one of those moments that time stopped for all of us. We were all in it together. We were watching the suffering of creatures. The daily images of oil-soaked pelicans, turtles, dolphins, and other sea creatures crashed into our awareness in a way we could not deny. For months, we watched as the oil gushed from the leak 5,000 feet below the surface into the waters of the Gulf of Mexico, onto the white sandy beaches and into the bayou. And we shared a common sorrow, a grief that washed into our souls. There was a feeling that something had been irrevocably changed by this event. The scientists reported that the spill effects might linger for years, perhaps changing the life of the Gulf forever. We looked on in shock and disbelief. Our hearts were broken. I often woke in the middle of the night during that time, sensing the dying creatures and weeping for them. It was not something over there that was happening. It was here in my body, in my heart. It was as if a part of me was being devastated by the oil, suffocated and poisoned by the toxins as they spewed into the water. Whatever physical distance there was between me and the Gulf, it made no difference. I experienced it immediately in my soul. And I know this was true for many others as well. But then they stopped. They got it capped. And we go, oh, okay, it's all better. And think of the hundreds of thousands of people worked on that cleanup. And it's never been the same. It's never been the same. And we have spilling like this all the time that we're not told anymore. We're being let out of the information of what is happening to our planet that gives us life. I want to share this video with you. The German poet Rilke said, quoted, "I don't have much knowledge yet in grief, so this massive darkness makes me small." He wrote that line in 1904. Our knowledge of grief has not grown much since then, and consequently, this darkness makes us small. How do we learn to carry our grief and not collapse or turn away in denial? How do we come to see a grief as vital and necessary and not something only to be endured? To achieve this shift requires a revisioning of grief, not as an event in our lives, a period of mourning, but as an ongoing conversation that accompanies us throughout our life. That's being aware of all of our feelings. That's what builds us in the wholeness. It's being totally honest with the divine self. Being totally honest with self about what we are witnessing will make us step out and do something different. It was Earth Day this week. What are you bringing to the change that you want to see in this world? Are you recycling? Are you composting? Are you looking into solar? Are you looking into the ways that you can get off fossil fuels in your cars and everything else? What are you adding to this world instead of taking from? We're supposed to leave without leaving an imprint. That's the Native Americans' whole idea, is you walk gently on this earth, because we are the protectors of the future. So, when I was in Mexico, at one point I said to Mike, I feel like going sailing on the ocean. I feel like that would really clear my energy. And I went into the concierge at our hotel, and I was waiting to meet with somebody to set us up to go on a sailing trip. And while I was sitting there, this man came rushing in with an American cowboy hat, little tiny underpants that were American flag, and cowboy boots that were American flag, with a thing over his shoulder that looked like it was a holster with a gun, and my whole body just kind of just jumped. "Hey, all of you!" when he walked into this room, and he was clearly loaded. All they do is just give alcohol to everybody. I mean, it's an incredible, like, ridiculous amounts of alcohol, these places. And he starts to explain that he just got off a plane, and he wore that outfit on the plane with a fake gun, like a squirt gun, inside this thing. And he said the only thing that they made him change, they didn't tell him to put more clothes on because he's naked. They made him take the spurs off the back of his boots. And he was putting them back on when he came into this room. It was just the most disgusting visual. And then he goes, "Hey, all of you, I just want to make it clear, all these Hispanic workers, they make around $100 a week, and you should really contemplate that when you tip them. You don't have to give them a lot." I stood up and I left. I didn't wait to meet with a person to go sailing, and I went to my room and I was with Mike, and I could not stop crying. It ripped my heart into 1,000 pieces. This proud American boy in Mexico, it made me grieve for the country that I was raised in. Speaking about people, our brothers and sisters, as if they're less than, and we should be giving them less, not taking care of them or looking out for them. They're like, the way they took care of COVID there was unbelievable. I mean, the way they were dressed, the way they washed everything. This place, I mean, they were working like you could not even imagine, with smiles on their faces. And the plain disrespect towards Mexicans and seeing them separate from us. But Elizabeth Lessor says in this podcast, even people that we don't agree with are also important, because diversity of thought will never go away. And if we know now that diversity of color, diversity of gender identification, and diversity of age, we have to respect other people's opinions and points of view. When someone has a very different point of view from you, it's important to not think of harming them or thinking about them too much and hating them for not agreeing with us, but realize that they are where they are and you are where you are. And you have too much work to do for the healing of this world, to be focusing on something that is so far from what you grasp. You're putting your energy and actually combining yourself with this something that so stood out as so wrong. And that's hard to do. We're all sitting in our judgments right now. We're pretty sure what we think is right and what's wrong. But also that person thinks they're right and that what they think is wrong. And so if we keep sitting in this place where we're just so far apart, how do we come back to this collective oneness? The most basic and powerful way to connect to another person is to listen. Just listen. Perhaps the most important thing we ever give each other is our attention. A loving silence often has far more power to heal and to connect than the most well-intentioned words. Eckhart Tolle says in his book, A New Earth, under the millennial patriarchal rule, the feminine principle has not been destroyed, but suppressed. This has enabled the ego to gain absolute supremacy over the collected human psyche. He says, however, it is harder for the ego to take root in the female than in the male, because women are more in touch with the inner body. and the intelligence with the organism where the intuitive faculties originate. They have greater openness and sensitivity toward other life forms and are more attuned to the natural world. And I'm not leaving the men out here, because meditating beings become more balanced between the male and female. The women become more connected with their power, and they get more of that testosterone energy so that they can stand up and make a huge difference from this intuitive divine feminine. And then the men, through the meditation, become more divine feminine and softer and less reactive. So I wanted to share just a little snippet of this podcast of Jane Fonda and Elizabeth Lessor. We need sound. Can you start it over?
30, I think. Research was done. Yeah, you know, I talk about this in my book, how for years, since 1930, I think, when the first research was done on asking the question, what do human beings do under stress and duress? And this researcher man researched many, many people, did lots of tests, and came up with fight or flight. That's what humans do under duress, except the only people used in the studies were men. So from 1930, when those studies were done, until 2006, I think, when this wonderful researcher woman from UCLA, Shelley Taylor, said, wait a minute, I wonder what would happen if we repeated those same tests of what happens under stress to human beings with women. And she did. And she found that fight, you know, you're being attacked or you're stressful, you want to fight or you flee. And you flee either by running away or you flee through overworking or alcohol or any ways you were saying. That's not what women actually do. Of course, some do, but most women tended to do what she called tend and befriend. Under duress, women tend and befriend, meaning they tend the most vulnerable. It's a terrible time. How am I going to take care of the children, the elderly, the people who can't walk? I'm going to tend to them. Or befriend, which means how can I create a sense of belonging among the people in my circle here so that we don't have to fight each other? How can we befriend? So this isn't what always happens, but this is the instinct. This is the female instinct to tend and befriend. And I found that so fascinating that it took until 2006 to undo that idea that all humans fight or flight under stress.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I'd highly recommend this podcast. You just have to look up on YouTube. Just type in Jane Fonda and Elizabeth Lessor and you'll find it, but from me to we. Jane Fonda says after that, we are literally at a crossroads right now. The women know that it is in our interconnectedness that, let me say that word and actually say it. Women know that it is in our interconnectedness that we will turn the stagnation of no change to complete and total change for our planet, for our children, for the basic life that our inner beings know is possible. I like the idea that the woman wants to tend to the most vulnerable and then befriend. It doesn't mean that they agreed with the ones they're going to befriend. That the crisis called for befriending, regardless. Because our life depends on our interconnectedness. So we have to ask ourselves, what are you willing to do today or this week that's risky and different than what you've already done? Are there some phone calls? Is there some walking when you're on your run to pick up trash? Have your little bag and, be a part of the solution. Put timers on your showers and on your sinks and make sure your lights are turned off when you leave the house. Don't let your car idle when you're running into a store because it's either too hot and you want your air conditioning on, or it's too cold and you want your heat on. Our innate need to be comfortable has built to a level that's way beyond selfish. It's what can I change that I'm doing on a day-to-day basis that could just add that much consciousness that I care, that my kids have a future, that my grandkids have a future, or my brother's kids have a future if you don't have children. You know people that do have them. Is your heart risking anything? Because when we really connect with that deep feeling place in ourselves, we're not going to hide out anymore. When we feel the call, we go. What is the call? What is being called for me? Is there some forgiveness that you need to initiate? Amends you must make that you fear the other person will reject? This is all about the healing in self, so therefore you can be this powerful co-creator, leader of change. When we risk, we grow. When we step out of our comfort zones, we are shown new sights, new intuitions, new drives. You may say that I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you will join us and we will live as one. That's why when they took us out of the Grand Canyon type of thing, said we're going to go to Mexico. And we had such a bonding, amazing experience. And who gets to go to Mexico with their dogs, right? Because I don't like leaving my dogs either. I like to go on road trips because I don't want to leave my dogs. I miss them too much. I like to take them on vacation. We get to bring our dogs to Mexico. They were playing on the beach with us. I mean, we could have stayed there forever and had the best time ever. I contemplated the world that my children have never experienced. And I thought, what are their children